In this video, we'll learn about aggregate functions in SQL. These functions are also known as group functions or set functions, and we'll discuss in a minute why they are known as group functions or set functions or even aggregate functions. But please note that we are discussing aggregate functions only. There are functions that are known as single row functions that we are not concerned about at the moment, but we are discussing aggregate functions. So what are aggregate functions? So before I go ahead, I'll show you a slide that shows the most frequently used aggregate functions or group functions. They are sum, average, standard deviation, maximum, minimum, and count. And some of them are abbreviated, as you can see: average, standard deviation, maximum, and minimum. But first thing first, what are functions? A function is a named operation that processes data from a table or from a database object in order to get a desired result. A function returns a single value, and for that reason it can be used in a select statement. And again, when we do the practical example, we'll see this happening. A function needs an input parameter which should be enclosed in parentheses. So the syntax, if you like, would be select and the name of the function and parameter enclosed in the bracket from table name. This would be the syntax in order to use a function. So group functions now. Back to group functions or aggregate functions. What these functions do, they summarize or group or aggregate the results, and that's why they're known as group functions. So no matter how many rows you have, they have the ability to group data, and they'll decrease the number of rows in a result set. They require data to be grouped as I described somehow, otherwise they'll treat the whole table as one group. So if you're applying the function on the whole table without describing a criteria that can group data somehow, you'll have just one row in front of you as a result set. Now these functions can also group data according to the criteria mentioned by the user, again returning a single row for each group. And I guess the best way to understand all this is to use these functions in a practical environment. So I'll just minimize this and I'll log on to the database in a minute. So I'll quickly activate this application SQL Developer, which we have been using along with some other applications in order to connect to the database and to learn SQL. So we have this application activated. We are still not connected to the database. So I want to use this connection called HR, which represents the name of the user in this example, and also the name of the schema. This let me connect to the database as user HR, and I'll type in the password and I'll say OK. So we are now connected to the database as user HR, and this schema has a number of tables. I want to use this table in order to describe aggregate functions or group functions. Let me show you all the data from this table. Control Enter, and you have a number of columns in front of you and 107 rows. So we'll use sum function, and this was the syntax. So sum function, any group function can be used in select statement, and parameter has to go within parentheses. So in this case we'll use this column as a parameter, salary, which is a numeric data type. Okay, so select sum salary within parentheses from the table name, which is employed in this example, and what you see is a sum of all salaries that belong to this column. So sum of all salaries is here in front of you, written as just one row instead of 107 rows. So the definition of a group function or a set function or an aggregate function, that they summarize data, they group data, and if no condition is used, they'll use whole table as one group. So in this example, there's no condition provided, and the function has treated this whole table, this whole column, as just one group. Now you can also group data according to a criteria. Most frequently, the column that can be used as group where you have repeated values. For example, this column department ID has repeated values. 90 has been repeated 3 times well, more than 3 times, and department 60 has been repeated several times. Department 100 has been repeated several times. What we can do, we can say some salary from employees group by the name of the column department underscore ID. What it will do, it will provide a sum of salaries for each department. So I just also want to show you department ID as a separate column, otherwise it's not going to make any sense. If I can type it right, run, and we have a set of data. So instead of 107 rows, we have 12 rows in front of us, and the data is summarized according to department ID. So department ID 100, the sum of salary is 51,608. Department 30 is 24,900. And you can also order by, you can use order by clause, order by department underscore ID, and let me run this again, and you have data ordered by department ID. So 10 first, 20, 30, 40, 50, and you can see department 10, the sum of salary is 4,400. Department 20, 19,000. Department 30, 24,900, and so forth. So I hope that describes or explains the aggregate functions, or group functions as you call it, or set functions. So if you don't provide a condition, a group function will treat whole table or whole database object as one group. But if you do provide a condition, for example department ID, in this case it will group the data according to the condition that has been provided.